Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another CSM20 interview. We have another candidate this is not their first time running, so we will hear a little bit more about them and how their campaign compares from last year to this year. But before we get into that, I just want to remind you that the reason I'm doing these is so that you can be informed as a voter. And so my two communities, Warm Life and Everkeys, our management and leadership teams can put together our individual ballots. So that is really where these interviews are stemming from. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. Go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your experience in EVE, what you do, and yeah.
Yeah, I'm Gustav Mannfred, started in 2009. In early times did a lot of PvE and stuff like that, exploration missions. Later tried PvP too. Then I also lived in Nullsec for some time, first as renter in Goonswarm and then in Profiblock when it was not red, don't shoot. And I also enjoy the old arena and proving grounds a lot. And nowadays I do a lot of Abyssal related stuff.
Cool. So you ran last year for CSM19, and I believe you also ran CSM18?
Yes,
So you're back again for 20. How has your platform changed?
it has changed a little bit. What was constant across all three campaigns is the proving grounds, but the rest I had adjusted it a bit because things have been implemented in the meantime, like industry related stuff, reducing ship cost. That's a bit less of a focus now, but what is a bit more of a focus apart from the arena is ships and module balance, new ships, quality of life, bug fixes, and that kind of stuff.
Okay, so why don't you go ahead and go into the specifics of your platform? You know, exactly what are your points for CSM19?
For CSM, it's actually bringing back proving grounds as well as ships and modules, little things, and some quality of life change to make everything a bit easier to understand, like with escalations and stuff like that.
Okay, so let's go ahead and jump into some fun questions. And the first one is, what do you think is the biggest barrier for new players and docking?
That is on the one hand not knowing what to do. And on the other hand is that low-end activities like level 1 missions or even level 2 missions don't make a lot of ISK. They're like stuff like doing 3 jumps and completing a daily is more profitable than level 1 missions.
Yeah, I agree with that. What role do you think fleets play in player retention?
Well, that depends on the type of fleet. If it's like an alliance fleet, then probably not that big of a role. But public fleet and MPSI, they are different because there are many different public MPSI fleet like Tutors, Spectre fleet and Fun Inc. and so on. And they actually are sometimes even accessible to new players, buying like Tech 1 frigates and stuff. I think they actually play a bigger role in keeping players engaged because you can join whenever you want. There are also PvE and PSI fleets like Incursions and FOBs before they were taken out of HiSec and so on.
Okay. Now, you had mentioned some quality of life updates that you'd like to see. Maybe some of these would fall into this question. What tools or features do you think CCP should add to the game that helps communities or alliances, corporations provide content to their players?
Well, I think that's actually they added last summer were the freelance jobs, and they are actually great because they allow to give a broader player base some things to do. What could be done there is actually look at scamming with those freelance jobs a little bit. So like if the for the deliver items one, like adding some sort of a warning if the buy price for the freelance job is way below market value, or if it's something like kill NPCs in low sec, that is actually a warning that you will have to go into low sec where others can hunt you, including the ones that made those freelance jobs. And secondly, would be an article or some sort of an overview that highlights third-party tools that could be useful for players like the Abyss Tracker, Eve Workbench, Zkill, and so on. Because many new players don't know about these tools when they start, and they can be very useful.
Awesome. Now, when we look at reasons why players, not necessarily just new players, but any player doesn't undock, do you think that toxicity lends into this? And when I say toxicity, I don't necessarily mean in-game functionality. So I don't necessarily mean ganking, although it can be toxic. I'm looking at more in faction warfare. Recently, my community has been told to go away. There's already too many people here. You know, that's kind of toxic mentality. So do you think this type of mentality is the reason that people don't undock?
Yeah, it can be, because then when so many people in faction warfare also are just like this, then it drives other people's away over time. There could especially be some more casual and relaxed player that just want to log in, play for an hour or two, and then do something else. Yeah, I think that can actually prevent players from undocking in certain areas of space.
Okay. What do you think keeps players logging in over and over again?
Well, that are seasonal events like Crimson Harvest or the Winter Nexus, because those are events where there's an event track that you can complete to get extra rewards like plaques and skill points. Then you have logging campaigns like the ones we have for the Crimson Harvest now, and then things that you can do spontaneously in a short time, like dailies, low tier abyssals, maybe one or two missions and stuff like that.
Do you think that some of the big wars out in nullsec are reasons that people log in? They won't log in otherwise?
Yeah, that can be sometimes, because when we look at player logged in, sometimes it is actually a bit higher during big wars when there are big fights happening. So those big wars, they actually can also make players log in sometimes.
Now let's look at solo players. I know that you do a lot of abyssals, you know, and that's solo. Do you think that CCP and other communities in Eve should be encouraging players like yourself to come and do group activities, or should we all just leave you alone?
Well, I mean, encouraging others to do certain things is always a good idea. Maybe someone gets encouraged to try something that he has never done before. Like I know for those MPSI fleet, I've never really been on one of them. Yeah, but with encouraging, can actually show them the advantages of, like, hey, if you join fleet X or do activity X with player Y, then maybe you get to know some new friends and stuff like that.
So is this where I encourage you to come out to my new player rooms with Fun Inc?
Maybe.
Now, thinking about solo playing again, do you think that CCP should add some more solo activities to the game, or do you think like abyssals and exploration is good enough?
I think it's always good to have more solo activities, because with group activities you're often bound to the playtimes of other people that potentially want to do it with you, and if they are not available, what you want to do then. Yeah, I think then it makes really sense to have some solo activities where you are more flexible. As said, abyss missions, dailies are good. Yeah, but there maybe could be some more activities added.
Have you ever sat there doing an abyssal and wished that CCP would add something specific into the game? Do you have anything in mind that you've kind of wished for?
Yeah, it's mainly bringing back proving grounds and the old arena in the abyss, as well as maybe some new ships like Royals battle crews for all other pirate factions would be nice, like a Blood Raider destroyer or Serpentis battle cruiser and so on.
Okay. So we had talked about this a little bit before starting the interview. The operation out in Providence this summer, where the Greater Eve community decided to evict Absolute Order due to their toxic mentality. Do you think that this was a appropriate action for the Eve community, or do you think that they just wanted to have an excuse to, go to war, or, are you neutral on it? What's your stance?
I would say that toxicity and toxic mentally has no place in Eve, and I think the community should do something about it. And I think it was actually a good thing. I also read a little bit about it, like I even read that they scammed new players with recruitment scams. They made friends, but new players didn't like check the taxes they had. What I read, yeah, and then they were some that role played as I some ideologies that shouldn't really be in the community. And so I think it was a justified action to do something about it, showing that toxicity doesn't belong into the community.
Cool. Now we're going to jump into some CSM specific questions. These are a little bit on the same track as last year, but a little bit different as well. So the first one is, oops, I think I was on the wrong set of questions. Sorry. Um, if you could ask CCP for one quality of life change, and this could be something that you have been wishing for or you think would really help your own community, what kind of quality of life change would you ask for? Just one.
Well, that would be related to escalations. This is when you get the pop-up window once you got that it already says where it is, so they can directly set destinations to it. And once you are in the system, that you can right-click and warp to it, just like with missions.
So, how do the escalations work right now? Is that in the activity finder or, oh God, what's the overview called with all the missions and stuff on it?
Agency,
Yeah, agency. Is that where it is right now?
yes. Yeah, but
So,
with missions, you can just right-click in space and warp to it. Would be nice to have the exact same thing for escalations too.
how about escalations that spawn in different systems or even like a high sec mission that gives a low sec escalation? How would you suggest handling that?
Well, actually, right now missions can't escalate, but there are some unrated sites that give a chain of escalations. And I think it actually makes sense that if the rewards are appropriate and good, that then it is possible that you get sent into low sec. Like, I mean, high risk should mean high rewards.
Okay. If you make it onto the CSM, what other candidate types would you like to serve with? This isn't necessarily what candidates, but what other type of expertise would you like to see on the council with you?
Yeah, I think it would be nice to have some representatives from all parts of the game, and all parts of the community, like some nullsec, lowsec, highsec, wormhole, even podgen. Be nice to have. And those from all areas of gameplay like PvP, industry, PvE, even third-party development like in the current CSM. I think these are also important to have. Wormholes are nice, as well as someone that would also bring up the new player perspective to the CSM.
Okay. So a lot of the CSM, once they get on, they figure out ways to approach their players and gather up issues and present them to CCP. What do you think your approach would be to showing player support for the things that you take to CCP?
That would be mainly through listening to them and noting it down, and then when I bring it up, then I also supplement it with those comments that the community brought in, be it positive, negative, so that CCP actually knows like this has like that kind of support, and maybe this and that should be implemented differently. Yeah, that's how I would make it.
Okay. A lot of times when you're on the CSM, players are going to bring you issues that you're going to sit there and go, okay, that's stupid. I cannot bring that to CCP. How do you think that you're going to deal with those type of players?
I would give honest feedback to it and telling them like why I don't agree with that, but to keep it constructively and objectively. Yeah, like that.
Okay. What can you do as a CSM that none of the other 55 candidates can do?
I can communicate through a variety of different channels. Like there are not many other candidates that have Twitch, YouTube, and so that they create content. I think that's actually something that sets me apart from most of the other candidates.
Okay. And what would you do if you get elected and on your first meeting, CCP reveals everything that they're going to be working on? And there is nothing really that they're going to be working on for this expansion that meets your expertise. So they're not going to do Proving Ground. They're not going to be really working on industry. And they've decided they're going to go like 100% into wormholes. How do you think that you would get on with that particular CSM? How would you fit yourself into this particular, idea, I guess?
Yeah, I think if that happens, I would still try my best to help them as good as possible to implement things right, make sure that everything works, collecting feedback from the players. But I would also still try to advocate for other things that may be related to wormhole space, but maybe not directly or not as much as they plan to do it.
Okay. What would you do? Well, actually, let's use the Proving Grounds. So you used to do the Proving Grounds quite a bit. If you were on the CSM when they decided to take it out, how do you think that you would have reacted?
Well, in that case, I would have tried my best to convince them to keep it in game as much as I could potentially, and also collect feedbacks from the player base to also supplement that, like hey, telling them, hey, many players enjoy them, please keep them in game if possible.
Okay. Now, we're at the final question. This has been going on since at least I was on the CSM. So, CSM 18. I know it was an issue in CSM 17. Most likely, 15, 16, 17. I know it was an issue in 19. And I foresee this going on into 20 and maybe up to 30, 40, 50. Projection. Do you think if you made it onto the council, you would continue pushing for the conversation on projection? Or do you think the changes that they put out in the summer expansion were enough?
Yeah, but still continue to push for continuing on iteration on force projection in nullsec, and also bring up more ideas how to address them. Like I once had the idea of range limits for ansiplexes, jump fatigue, or also requiring drifter holes to be probed down rather than they just spawn with a beacon. Yeah, because projection is still a bit of a problem. Like, I mean, last week I was doing ESS PvP null second, like a response fleet was there from the stage in shortest possible amount of time because of all those ansiplexes they have to in nearly every system. Yeah, I think that would still be something to address to make nullsec, small scale PvP like ESS and so more fun.
Okay. Now we are in the final thoughts. Why should players vote for you? And why should my communities put you on our ballots?
That's first of all, I listen to the issues of the player. I will also bring up stuff that the player or the communities bring up to me, not just my own stuff. Then my campaign is somewhat relevant for all players from all areas of space, be it from new players to vets as well as for PvP, PvE, industry. Like I have a bit of everything in my campaign.
Okay. Well, if people watch your interview and they want to ask you questions or give you comments, where can they find you on the internet?
On Discord, they can find me on Twitch, YouTube, and of course my forum post.
Excellent. We'll get those all in the description of the interview when it goes up on YouTube. Thank you so much for coming and interviewing, and best of luck with your campaign.
Thanks.